Good morning and welcome to Waking Up with Don. It is Monday and it is Medical Monday, and we have Dr. Roman Nation to give us some health tips for your week. Dr. Nation, thank you for coming back on the show and getting us smart on what we need to look out for. I read in the news recently that there is a measles outbreak.
Correct.
Now, I'm of a generation where I pretty much had all the childhood diseases, but there are a lot of vaccinations that will keep you from getting the measles or the mumps or whatever.
Yep.
What's going on? Huge outbreak in the Philippines. Measles is pretty common in Europe and in Asia, and it's making a comeback here.
It's becoming a lot more common because of some of the anti-vaccination movements that certain groups have started. When we talked before about herd immunity is kind of what's kept some of that in check, but as the anti-vaccination movement grows is when you start getting these measles outbreaks.
And particularly if you travel, it's vacation season, and maybe your family's taking a European vacation. Should you make sure your shots are up to date?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have quite a few folks that have come to us in the clinic when they're going to South America, and they're concerned about hepatitis. Vaccinations that are standard now for children that are been born in the last decade have been about the same in terms of hepatitis A, B, measles, mumps, rubella, pneumonia, those types of things, and even meningitis is actually now kind of as an expected standard as far as vaccinations go. So there's quite a few things that are considered standard, but if parents don't vaccinate their children or parents haven't been vaccinated themselves and they go to a foreign country, it's not uncommon at all to get hepatitis A as part of a foodborne illness. And then one of the biggest things when you talk about travel is drinking clean water. So that's a huge thing in parasitology is that these little parasites you can't see them unless you're looking under a microscope.
And we take that for granted in this country, that
Absolutely.
you turn on the tap and the water's clean
Yeah.
and you can drink it.
Yep,
That's not always the case
in
other countries.
No, and it's expected to be chlorinated. And if you really pay attention to the water areas around here, occasionally you'll get notices in the mail or over TV that says that the water supply is not up to the standard, so they don't recommend drinking the tap water for a very short period of time, and then they bring it back to the standard. But there's testing that's done on a regular basis through the county for those types of things.
It's funny you should mention chlorination, because even back in the day there was an anti-chlorination movement.
Yes.
Just like the anti-vaccination
Correct.
movement. People thought it was some sort of plot or scheme or
Yep.
God
Yep.
knows what, or somebody
Yeah.
was getting rich off it. But,
yeah, and it's really strange because there's still areas around Bay County that don't fluoridate their water. And you talk about teeth health, you look at some of the biggest things that cause long-term cardiac disease and those kinds of things. You can see it just about everywhere you go is people who have poor teeth condition, and a vast majority of that is not just from not brushing your teeth or taking care of your teeth. As you're older, it actually starts when they're younger, when their teeth are forming, and you don't give your children fluoridated water. So certain communities where we did residency in California, they actually sell fluoridated water at the grocery store because the city or wherever their housing is doesn't put fluoride in it, so you actually give your kids fluoridated water.
It's amazing. We talked briefly before we started the interview about the history of the Gulf Coast. And because of the climate, we had a lot of diseases here back in the 1800s that you would only associate with like third world countries or tropical countries. I know when I traveled to the Republic of Panama, they still had dengue fever down there.
Yes, sir.
Which is just sounds so exotic to American ears.
Yeah.
And if you went to Panama, you had to stay in the canal zone.
Yep.
If you went outside the canal zone, you had to get all these shots to go anywhere else.
Yep, and that's based on mosquito control, and they do a lot of that. If you ever see the trucks driving around at night, you have the little fog that comes out of them at night. That's all stuff trying to keep mosquito control down. The biggest thing that we were always taught in medical school is that if you're near a standing body of water, be more careful. And you think about that around here. There's a ton of standing bodies.
I live on a lake.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it's in the early morning hours and in the late evening hours, right around sunset. So most people can feel the little gnats and stuff that come around, but they don't actually feel the mosquitoes, and those are the ones that tend to bite and carry diseases and stuff with them. Now, it's still exceptionally rare to contract something like that in this area, and as far as I know, I haven't seen any reports of that.
But every now and then you hear a story of meningitis, and that's carried by mosquitoes, isn't it?
Actually, no. Meningitis is just like the flu. It's a respiratory type illness that gets passed from one person to another one, or through secretions, those kinds of things. And meningitis is a specific set of, there's bacteria that causes it, and there's certain types of viruses that cause it too. The dorm population and like college kids is really the most susceptible one. But they've also updated the vaccines so that children about age 11 or 12 is also recommended to get meningitis vaccines as well.
Well, we've got to run off to local weather, but let's talk more about that on the other side of this break. And now to your local weather, brought to you by the West Pittman Law Firm, westpittmanlawfirm.com. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dr. Roman Nation, and it is Medical Monday. We were talking a lot during the break, but I just want to wrap up our last topic about living here in the Sun Belt.
Yes, sir.
What do we need to be aware of? I know people are very cognizant of the dangers of the sun.
They are. What's interesting is as the younger population isn't nearly as at risk for skin cancers and those types of things because their DNA is just much more versatile and reparative when it comes to sun damage. It is. It's just the way that our mitochondria work and how our system is put together. As we get older, everything changes, as everybody is aware of. And what I typically see is as folks age, they start to chalk a lot of things up to just being older. Things like joint pains, or their skin gets has more wrinkles in it, or their skin dries out, those types of things. And really, it comes from when we talk about sun avoidance. A lot of folks, as they get older, have kind of programmed into stay away from the sun. Well, when you do that, you end up becoming vitamin D deficient. Vitamin D deficiency, and I talk about this.
Darned if you don't.
It really is, and it's the same thing. We do a lot of stuff on the nutrition stuff with eggs too, because that's gotten a huge bad rap in the past, and so I'll tell you more about that.
Yeah.
But on vitamin D, we have a lot of folks that stay out of the sun trying to avoid skin cancer. Well, in the process of doing that, when you become vitamin D deficient, your risk for cardiac disease goes up. So there's a lot of importance there to that, making sure you have other vitamin supplements if you're not getting it from the sun. And I wouldn't recommend trying to get your vitamin D level from the sun because your risk of skin cancer.
But everybody needs a little bit of sun, right?
Everybody does.
I got some this weekend. I cooked my face out at Harley Davidson.
And Dr. Kanawi and I have talked about this in the past, is that the requirement for being in the sun is about 30 minutes of full sunshine a day when the sun is at high noon. Now, try and schedule your day around that.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty hard. Anything beyond that, you're going to have less sun exposure.
You don't need to be like in your bathing suit on the beach. I mean, just walk the dog or something too, right?
That doesn't quite give you enough. That's the problem, is because, like we're dressed right now, you have this much and this much. That's less than 10% of your body skin area that's going to have sun exposure to it. So no, and you don't want to try and concentrate all that sun on your face because it's going to make you look older a lot faster.
I know how that goes. My face looks like an old catcher's mitt now because of the sun. Now, an interesting part of your practice now is that you've got JT on staff now, and he's a nutritionist.
Yep.
And now he's actually putting people's lives back on track, and it's not just weight; their fitness and everything is turning around.
We've had some tremendous success. One of my greatest success stories is a gentleman that I've been following for, I've known him for about 3-4 years now, and he's a diabetic, an insulin-dependent diabetic, and he's almost 70 years old. We meet every 3 months, and we watch his numbers, and we talk about his diet, and we talk about his exercise and things like that, and none of it ever really came together. So when I brought JT on, I said, here, you want to be my test case? And he says, well, yeah, sure, let's go. And I kid you not, in 2 weeks, he came back beaming from just 2 weeks worth of eating cleanly.
Eating clean?
Yeah.
What all does that mean?
And that's what I was talking about during the break, is that, a lot of media and diets push towards, like books, eat this, don't eat this, eat that instead, of those kinds of things. A lot of things push towards avoidance of specific types of foods, and there's a little bit to that. You don't want to try and make the majority of your diet ice cream and donuts and those kinds of things. But the way that we teach it is there's a specific requirement that your body needs on a daily basis, and that comes from a combination of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And when you get those in your system in the right order and throughout the day, then your metabolism really does turn on.
In the right order.
Correct.
In the right proportion.
Correct.
And right timing too.
Correct. Yes. And because if you try to put it all in there at once, like the biggest mistake a lot of my diabetics make is that, well, I don't understand why I'm not losing weight, or why my sugars are higher because I only eat once a day. That is the worst thing you could possibly do for your system.
You got to have 3 squares, right? Is that right?
It's closer to 4 to 5, and if you're more athletic, it's actually 6 to 7.
So grazing is probably a good thing to do.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Your system will do a lot better metabolically if it does that. that. So, but yeah, the patient I was talking about, we've not only has he lost weight, he's gotten his face back. His insulin levels have dropped by half.
Wow.
In 2 months, and his
amazing.
joint pains are better too. I mean, it's kind of a magical type thing. And I have another patient that we talked about during the break. She's been doing it for about 6 weeks now, and these are not starvation diets. That's the thing, is most people expect when they start a diet that the scale is going to drop first. Really, from folks who have been trying to diet, that the scale actually doesn't change at all up front, and in some it goes up because they've been dehydrated and malnourished. So in the process of doing that, they swell to start with, and then they start losing. They lose inches first, and then the
So
scale
the most
comes
immediate
down.
measure of success is the tape.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Dr. Nation, we're so out of time. It's not funny,
like
but
always.
But as always, because I could talk to you for hours. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
And I look forward to learning more about JT and his work.
Yes, sir.
Out at Nation's Best,
Yes, sir.
out there on Highway 77. And we'll be right back after your Max Biz tip from Zenobia.
Hi and good morning. Welcome back to Waking Up with Don. I'm Zenobia Andrews, your business system strategist, and I am super excited to be bringing you your Max Biz tip for the week. Our topic for this week is one of my all-time favorite that I coach on throughout the year, and that is building your brand, building your personal brand, building your company's brand. I am super excited because this topic is what gets you in the game to go to that next level in your business. You know, I know that many of you already know what brand means, but for the one or two of you that don't, a brand is simply your promise to your customers. It's your promise to your customers. And it's that promise that when you deliver, it will separate you from everybody else. It separates you from the crowd. It's what your customers expect from you in regards to your products and your services. Building your brand. Wow, it's going to be an exciting week. You know, we also, in addition to that, have a Max Lab business training this Saturday at 10 o'clock here in the Max Out Studios. I would love for you to come and be supported in building your brand. Our address is 404 South Tender Parkway, number A. And man, it's going to be amazing. Put your bootstraps on. We're ready to build your brand. We're ready to take you to the next level. I'm Zenobia Andrews, your business system strategist. I would love to connect with you on social media. My website is www.zenoviaandrews.com. You connect with me, I'll connect with you. Let's go back to Waking Up with Don.
Welcome back to the show. There have been many famous Ariases, that's my last name, in the history of the world. There was Oscar Arias, who was a Nobel Prize winner and the president of Costa Rica. And I think everybody's heard about Jimmy Arias, the tennis player. And of course, my personal favorite, Jodi Arias, the murderer. But I have a guy here who is none of those people, and his name is Jim Arias. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Don.
I've been dying to meet you for a long time because people have mistaken me for you.
Yes.
They were like, hey, you got Arias Artifacts. You got that little gun store. I'm like, no, I've got a TV show.
That's right.
They're like, hey, can we go to your place and have a meeting at your place? And I'm like, no, because that's not my place.
That's right.
So Jim, it's great to finally meet you. And I know you do a good business there because I walked in there one day to go meet you, and the place was packed. I couldn't get to you.
Yeah, we've expanded our store. We're about 4 times as big as we were probably when you came by.
It was pretty small.
So it's right next door to our former location. So it's still easy to find if you know where to look.
Yeah. Now, a little bit about your background. You're retired from the Navy, or?
Well, I worked in the lab here for about 20 years. Before that, I worked in private industry. I was a port engineer for an offshore oil industry company. Before that, I was in the Coast Guard in the military. So
Okay.
that's kind of the background. But we've been in Bay County for over 20 years.
So how did you make firearms your living now?
Well, it's something you catch early on. I was very interested in firearms as a child. My uncle was actually taught me to hunt and got me interested in guns. And after that, I became just interested in the mechanical complexity and also the evolution of firearms. So the antique and collectible firearms have been mainly what I've driven.
They are very collectible, and some of them are very valuable. And unlike other depreciating assets you may buy, the guns, more often than not, appreciate, don't they?
That's correct. Especially the older guns. The modern guns, you're seeing more and more use of polymers, which you'll recognize as plastic. It's hard to imagine those guns appreciating considerably, which only makes the older guns that much more valuable because there's so much handwork, there's so much artistry, if you will, in some of them, that they're recognized not so much as a firearm anymore, but as a work of art.
Isn't that something? And you see that in other things too, like motorcycles, for instance.
Exactly. Vintage motorcycles still are appreciating, where a modern motorcycle that's 2 or 3 years old is depreciating. Now, we just looked at a 1976 Harley Davidson about 2 weeks ago. We were down in Daytona. That bike dipped, of course, as it got older, and now is appreciating. It's worth much more than its list price years ago.
And you see that with firearms too, don't you?
You do, you do. For instance, the German Luger is a highly collectible firearm. Back in the 70s, you could buy a decent example for $60 to $100. That same gun today could be worth $1,500 to $2,000.
Isn't that something? You know, I know you brought some of your stuff with you, and I'm dying to take a look at it.
Sure.
Maybe you can show me some of your more collectible items, and tell us a little bit more about Arias artifacts and how you got the name.
Okay.
Not the name Arias. I know how you got that. You were born into it. But artifacts.
Sure.
You're watching Waking Up with Don, and we'll be right back with Jim Arias after these messages. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Jim Arias. Am I saying your name right, Jim?
You are.
Okay. I'm here with Jim Arias from Arias Artifacts out here on Panama City Beach, and he's brought a few artifacts with him. Jim, these are you were talking about works of art. Like this firearm over here is just beautiful.
Yeah, this is a good example of what I was talking about as far as firearm as art. This was a Colt first generation single action Army cowboy gun. This was produced in June of 1886 as a 45 long Colt. Somewhere in its past it was converted to 38 long Colt, probably to make it easier to shoot. But you can see that it is totally engraved all over the gun. There are silver inlays on the back strap and the foregrip. The grips are sterling silver over pewter. The gun still functions, so it is definitely still a firearm. But this
now
gun,
it's more of a showpiece than a firearm.
absolutely,
you wouldn't take this to the range. I mean,
you could, but you won't.
yeah.
Yeah, because the more wear it gets on it, of course, it degrades the value. But this one can be appreciated for its condition and its age. You don't see many things made in 1886 that still hold together like this.
It's amazing. It looks almost new.
The other one that I brought was even older. This is a Sharps 4-barrel pepper box. A lot of people will call this a Derringer, even though it's not technically correct. This is before folks figured out that a rotating cylinder was a better idea. So the firing pin on the hammer actually rotates once around for each one of the different barrels. It loads pretty spiffy. The barrels slide forward. Very popular with gamblers and ladies of the evening.
Well, you could certainly secret that away into a purse or anywhere on your person.
Yes, you could. This gun was made in the 1860s.
Beautiful. Now, what are we dealing with here? This is pretty awesome.
These are a couple of interesting World War II pieces. The one at the top, most people will recognize as a Walther P-38. This one was made in 1943. It's totally matching, which is a little bit unusual for a gun of that age. It has 2 matching magazines that come with it. This was brought back from World War II by a vet.
Was that a German gun? That was what the Germans carried?
This
perhaps?
is what most of the German officers were using in World War II.
Now, this is something we all recognize as a World War II gun. This is a Luger.
This
what's
is
the history behind that?
This is a very interesting version of the Luger. This one came from Finland, actually. Finland got a lot of German property after the war as war reparations. So this gun has a chamber date of 1936. That's when it was originally produced. It's a mixture of parts, which is not unusual for this gun. There are hundreds of variations of the German Luger. A Luger collector will spend a lifetime and still not get all the different variations.
Jim, this is amazing stuff, and we're so out of time, it's not funny. If people
Okay.
wanted to learn more about your business, how do we get in touch with you, and where can we find you?
I have a website, ariasartifacts.com, or you can call us at 230-8100.
Or you could stop by the store and visit.
You could. We're located in the Beach Walk Shopping Center. That's where Lindsay's Furniture and Beach Music are located.
Right over the bridge on Panama City Beach.
Just over the bridge on Thomas Drive and Highway 98.
Jim Arias, no relation, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Sure.
And we'll see you next time.